Good morning, Mike. How you doing? Happy
Good morning,
Wednesday.
Steve. Hey, happy Wednesday to you. How you feeling today? Everything
I'm
good?
feeling good, thank you. Thank you for asking. Feeling a lot better. Yeah, I get up, I got my
Good.
sauna in, and I feel good. Wednesday, Wednesday.
My favorite day, every Wednesday, and
There
I'm
you
really
go.
excited about today. I've got two friends of mine joining me on the Workplace Innovator interactive live stream, noon Eastern. Not too late to join us, folks, if you hear this any week, actually, whether you hear it today or in the future. We've been doing it for a long time to come, I'm sure. There's so much to talk about. But today's chat is going to be a really good one. It's around trust, Steve. Who do you
Hmm.
trust? Have you thought about the importance of trust? How do you define it? Let me start there. How do you define trust? What's trust mean to you when it comes to
Wow.
all we're dealing with today, especially?
Yeah, no, I mean, thanks for the heads up on this, by the way. I really appreciate
No, yeah,
that.
no
Right
warning.
off the
There's no
bat, right off
script.
the bat,
Put you on the spot.
Nah,
You,
trust,
you have
trust
all the
is.
answers for me, Steve. You have all
I
the
I
answers.
guarantee you I do not. But trust is important, right? Especially at this time, right? Trust is you're putting faith in other human beings, you're putting faith in society, we're putting faith in our organizations, and trust is, the feeling we have in others that are going to do right by ourselves and right by everybody else involved. And I think that's how the spirit of where you're coming from with the question of trust. Am I getting you right?
You are. And it
Okay.
ties into all the things we talk about here each morning because we've addressed a lot of things about data and privacy and contact tracing when it comes to
Yeah.
getting back to a public life or even our workplaces. What do we trust our government, our employers, our colleagues to, and our friends, our neighbors to know, and how can we balance that tension, especially here? I think in the US we have some unique cultural questions around our freedoms and our privacy. And I think you've talked about that's also important in Europe, certainly with a lot of the legislation there about
Yeah.
privacy. So I'm sure it'll be an issue over there too. But you've got public health officials telling you need to do something to contact trace after someone's been known to have an infection or be exposed to someone who has. And then all of a sudden, that's the best way to contain it. But when you see some of the, I love the word, draconian measures that are being used in other parts of the world, Asian countries or some other countries where the freedoms aren't part of the culture, people are all about give up your phone and we'll trace where you've been and lock you down. And I just don't see that flying here. So we need trust. We need to build, again, a better channel of communication. Effective leadership communicates the benefits of these initiatives, whatever they are. And it's just something that we have to do a better job of making sure people know, hey, again, I'll say it every week just as a public service announcement. I ask you to wear the mask, not for you, but for others, the vulnerable around you. It's not we're wearing masks to show how weak or how strong we are. We're wearing a mask to protect those around us who may be vulnerable, and we're not worried about ourselves. We're worried about others. So if everybody is worried about the other, then we'll be protected too. But that's not the point of wearing the mask. So when there's this controversy I read about masks, it's an ongoing issue, and it's just based on a fallacy. It's just kind of a strange phenomenon. But I don't want to go down that road too far. But I think that's, again, trust. Who do you trust? Do you trust the media when they tell you something? When you trust uh, whoever, our president, Dr. Fauci? It's just a strange time here on May 13th, Wednesday the 13th, kind of like
Wednesday the
Friday the 13th.
13th. I know, I know. And yeah, you kind of caught me off guard going right into there. That's so deep right off the bat. But no, I liked it. I liked it. And obviously, May 13th is Leprechaun Day, Mike. So all our Irish
Well,
friends out there are running around like leprechauns today. You may think it's March 17th, but actually today is Leprechaun Day.
interesting. May 13th is
I
Leprechaun
have
Day.
no idea why.
Well, it's magically delicious. It must be Lucky Charms Day. That's what
There
I
you
think of when I
go.
think of leprechauns.
That's funny. That's
Were Lucky
funny.
Charms a big part of your childhood in Northern
Absolutely,
Ireland, Steve?
absolutely
Oh,
not.
good.
No, not at all. No, no,
Absolutely
no,
not.
no, no. They weren't. I was a Weetabix man. So yeah. So Lucky Charms were not part of it. So
Wheaties? Did you say Wheaties?
Weetabix.
Weetabix.
Yeah.
Never heard of it.
Oh,
Wow. See, we could get out we could just do a podcast about the cultural changes, the differences
uh,
between our upbringings. That's awesome.
people may enjoy that more.
Maybe.
Yeah.
We certainly have a lot of strange opinions and tastes.
Sure,
But
Todd.
what did you want to talk about today? I kind of hijacked the opening of the show, but you had things in mind today?
I did, and I actually was reminded this morning. I spent a little bit of time, as you know, I like to watch, reread, rewatch, re-listen to, things that have been in the past, be it Open Source Workplace, be it your podcast, be it other resources, because I think whenever we reread things in today's context, we we're reminded of basic frameworks. We're reminded of different ways to think about things. And this morning I was listening to Neil Usher's video animation we did of his book summary, The Elemental Workplace. And there was
Ah, yes.
one line in there, he actually noted that workplace is a journey, not a destination. And it's not necessarily that we don't know this, but again, we talked about the last couple of days, the, nudge, right? How do we get these nudges? How do we get these reminders? And as we all think about the return to the office, as we all think about the future workplace strategies, as we all think about the changing work styles that actually everybody's going through at the moment, we have to be reminded this is a journey we're on, right? There's no destination, there's no right answer. And it is going to be a constant iteration. And we have to remind ourselves not to put ourselves under that sort of emotional pressure, and obviously leadership will be reinforcing that and sort of reminding themselves of that too, I'm sure, but all the way through an organization. And it's something that sort of, given some of the conversations I've been involved with the last few days, it's a nice reminder to me, sort of like this is a journey, right? It is an evolution. Information is going to come to us. We're going to see more how our employees behave, how our colleagues behave, how we behave, not just from an organizational perspective, but from a society perspective. So how do we adjust through that? But again, not to put ourselves under too much pressure that, whatever we do on day one, day 60, day 100, it will be different no matter how we perceive it. It will be, but we just have to remind ourselves that this is a journey we're on.
Indeed, and a long one. And a
It is a
long one
long one.
that I've had to adjust to. And I think last week was the breaking point. It was about this time last week that I was under all that pressure and the digital wall. I was hitting the cognitive overload, and I had to adjust things and say, listen, if you're going to survive this living with COVID-19, not getting to the other side, it's not about when is it going to end after a couple of weeks, a couple of months. It's this is going to be around for years in some way or the other. So we need to adjust. And I have finally, I think, begun to see a more healthy approach to it. When I still have my down moments and my disappointments, I went back and watched. Speaking about rewatching, I rewatched one of our early conversations here where we were just getting our heads around this pandemic and what it means, and we had no idea what we were heading into. And I talked about the article about grief, about we're grieving the loss of so many of what we used to call normal things. And you were like, wow, I hadn't thought about that. And it really is. It's something now we're getting to another phase in that journey of adjustment, getting used to it, adapting. Humans are good at that, and it just takes some time. And now we're 2 months in, and I've begun to think about, again, living with this, not waiting for a cure, not waiting for a vaccine, although we still are hopeful that therapeutics will come together that will help diminish the effect of this. And we've seen some positive signs there. But now it's just we've got data, we've got more information. We still don't know a lot. There's a lot we don't know, and we don't know what we don't know. And those truisms are still in effect. One of my favorites at the very beginning of this was the truth of the matter is we don't know what the truth of the matter is. I think that's still to be, kind of our tagline here.
Yeah.
But we do know some things, and we do know that the economy needs to get rolling again, and that different people have different opinions, and some of us can continue to work from home, and some of us are more comfortable working from home, and some of us will have employers who are very supportive of that. And then I've learned yesterday, surprisingly, that some will not. Some have to make some hard choices, and I realized that many have already made hard choices. I saw the fact that many big companies, certainly in the manufacturing areas and warehouses like Amazon, their workers have continued through this entire time going to work, and we can learn a lot from what's been going on in their, adopting, I should say, new protocols and procedures. And none of it's perfect. It's going to be, again, a long journey day by day. So we have lots to talk about here, and I wonder what you think our role is in all of this. I think the reopening of the offices is what kind of was top of mind for me, because the the fact that there's a migration heading back. It's happening already in some parts of our country. I know down in Texas, the economy's been reopened. Actually, most states have now a plan. Even New York, I heard, is starting to loosen some of the restrictions. So it's a matter of letting those who feel comfortable get out there and put hopefully some procedures and protocols in place, and then trusting those will be followed, and trusting each other to, try to do what's right to, yes, get ourselves back into whatever level of re-engagement we feel good about, but also think of others and make it as comfortable as we can for others. And that's where I think we're going to have some struggles, some challenges, but I'll leave it at you mentioned, or it was Kay Sargent, I guess, who mentioned it originally, but it's this dance. It's this long journey, and it's this hammer and the dance. It was a New York Times article she was quoting a couple weeks ago. We put the hammer down, we locked down, we got some time, we flattened the curve. Now it's the dance. A couple steps forward, 2 steps back, 3 steps forward, 1 step back. It's going to be this back and forth as we figure out what it all means going forward. I think that's a great visual.
No, it is absolutely, and it sort of nicely dovetail into sort of that thought that that Neil was sharing, not in this context, but as it served as a reminder from his book, right? We are on a journey, and it is going to be that 1 step forward, 2 steps back, and it is going to be that constant iteration, because things will change as organizations look at the workplace across geographies. It's going to be so different in different geographies as well. It's a hard thing to balance, and whenever we sort of take back and you look at, okay, what does the workplace look like today, and what's the workplace going to look like tomorrow? And we've talked in the past about, I don't want to say employers. I don't look at it that way. It's if you take the office as an asset, it's like, how is that asset going to be utilized for employees to be productive, be innovative, and how's it going to attract people back to that? Right, you have to look at that asset as an attraction point. How's it going to be a magnet to sort of draw people out of their homes back to the office? What are the benefits they're going to get? And sort of those are the sort of things that are framing in sort of in the head, and it's really going to be a fascinating journey that we're going to be on. And you mentioned a little bit earlier about what does that look like when we go back into the office? And you think about all those elements. You think a day in the life journey through that office. How is that going to change over time? I think it's going to be fascinating. It's going to be fascinating.
I hope and again, I do too. It's something we hope we don't throw out a lot of the lessons we learned earlier, because some of that knee-jerk reaction we've seen in the rush to reopen and be safe and have the, plexiglass walls up and things like that. I think obviously do what it takes to create safety and a feeling of safety, but let's not put everybody back into individual offices, private offices with the door closed. Because I heard somebody say that. I think it was one of your guests actually said that. And I don't know. I disagree. I think there's some that may be our gut reaction. Let's get everybody closed off again. But there's some evidence that I've heard from some of my guests that it's actually easier and safer to have shared spaces, open seating, obviously with physical distancing. And there's tools now. iOffice has a tool that helps do that. It's called Space Right. But there are ways to create a floor plan, adjust, do different moves of employees to allow that physical distancing, and the traffic patterns and all those things can be taken into account on the floor plan. But then it's like the idea of disinfecting and cleaning, and how do you give that comfort? Well, you can actually use technology and use sensors and other things to say, all right, this space has been disinfected. Now it's safe for someone to occupy this space. And it's easier to clean thoroughly if there's not someone anchored to that space. So if it's a private area that's just going to be for you or me, we may have some personal stuff there, pictures, leave our computer, leave our keyboard, leave our mouse. It's harder to clean that space than it is if someone just very flexibly moves in with their own equipment, does their work, even if it's for a couple hours or half a day, and then gets up and leaves, marks the space as available, a cleaning crew comes in, cleans it, it's ready for the next person. So there's things like that are being discussed, and it's not all, hopefully not all a return to the draconian ways of the closed office or high wall cubicles, right? So I wonder what Neil's would say today. Have you heard any or read anything from Neil the last couple months?
He put an article out yesterday, and it was interesting. It was more by the perspective of somebody having a conversation with themselves a little bit further down their line and looking back at what we're going through today and sort of philosophical what changes could be made. And it was an interesting read. He didn't really tease out what the workplace will look like or anything like that. It wasn't, but it was just an interesting perspective that he was trying to portray as he sort of as we look back to sort of see the lessons learned from what we're going through today. But if you just wanted to sort of dovetail back to where to what you were just saying, um, and what you actually give as an example is actually the way to do it is not to have everybody as an assigned seat. So everyone they have the ability to move between seats or they have the ability to book a seat, but it's almost like an open seating plan, a hoteling or call it whatever verb you want to use to describe what that is. And I wonder if that will be the model we go to, because to your point, it is one that's easily maintained, cleaned. People would feel safe, secure because in essence they do feel it is clean. There's nothing, no belongings on it. But also will that better serve the organization's employees? Because then they have the freedom, the flexibility to choose whether they come into the office or whether they don't come into the office. They will have the ability to choose, okay, where is the best place for me to do the tasks I need to do today? Is it going to be best served in the office with my colleagues, or is it going to be best served in my home office, or will it be better served going to the cafe or the local cafe, your Starbucks? It's where will it be best served? And I'm just curious to know what was sort of if you have any thoughts on that, because I'm fascinated to sort of understand where that will go as well to see how that then translates for many organizations.
Yeah, my thoughts is that it's not much different. It's just another layer of this COVID-19 situation is another layer of data, another factor to consider. It still should be philosophically, I believe, it should be about choice and control. Individuals have different needs, different personalities, different styles, different work, different roles. So giving them the most choice and control and then adding that layer of, and here's what we're doing to keep you safe from this virus, this current situation, somehow communicate that to them. And again, that'll draw people to a comfort level and draw them back to the office where appropriate. I think that the concern that I've heard from many of my guests, and I agree with them, is that there are some discussions. The office is dead. You hear the why, and again, this is an argument. Especially the folks in the UK have debated for the Neil Ushers and the Mark Eltringhams, and those folks have had this back and forth about the workplace and all these articles about the office being dead. And I just saw another headline on Twitter the other day about that. I didn't even read the article, but we're human beings. We need to find ways to connect with others. This is going to be a long journey, yes, but it is going to be a temporary one, and that could be 1 or 2 years. But let's not squander this time. That's what I've heard over and over again. It's also an opportunity to rethink. The Andrew Mawsons of the world who say, rethink real estate, rethink why we have workplaces to begin with. And we don't realize, I think I don't realize that many of the people we talk to, the really forward-thinking workplace leaders, strategists, designers, they're almost a little unusual. If you look at the big cities and some of the things that the big organizations have done to include some of these flexible spaces and amenities and activity-based, agile environments, the culture change, it's still not the norm. I think here in the U.S. and probably in Europe, there's still a lot of work to be done. And this has forced us all to kind of reset the baseline and begin again. So again, wish it didn't have to happen. Certainly grieve for all those who have been suffering through this pandemic, but there is an opportunity here when it comes to how we adjust our lives, and not just in the workplace, but in many facets of our lives. And I saw an interesting discussion about that too. We can get into if you want, but this is about workplace, and certainly there's going to be some changes happening, and hopefully for the better. Hopefully we don't squander the opportunity.
No, and I think you're absolutely right where you mentioned, in the US, the thought of people not working in an office was a challenge for people to get over emotionally. to have people not come into the office just seems so foreign. Some organizations had really tried to push that direction, but found productivity issues, so they started pulling people back to the office, right? Great examples of Yahoo, IBM, and so on
Yep.
and so forth, right? And that's where that happened. So that therefore a lot of other organizations were a little concerned. Where I think now, with the way things are happening, everyone's working from home, and companies will be assessing, well, what does that mean for our organization? What does that mean for the employees and what they're doing? And obviously, depending on the tasks that individuals are doing, some will be able to continue to work very productively at home or in any environment, and there's others who just simply will not. It could be the type of work they're doing, it could be the circumstances, it could be where they live, it could be a variety of different reasons. And the other thing we have to continually remind ourselves are these are not true, work from home situations, right? Because people are at home, they're maybe having to do schoolwork, they're probably having to look after kids, keep kids entertained, they're probably maybe sharing homes with other people that they may or may not like. And there's a lot of different ways to look at what that actually means for people's productivity. But it's going to be really interesting. But it's a really important point you made. The U.S. has been so delayed in taking these steps that actually we now have the opportunity to really test the hypothesis that actually people can be productive from wherever they are, and actually allowing employees to work from wherever they think they should be working, that actually allows them to be their most productive. We're now able to test that hypothesis that one can be trusted to do it, tying it back to your trust element.
There you go.
But then also, allowing organizations to see what does work and what doesn't work, because there are plenty of things I'm sure that are not working right now. And time will tell what those things are.
Yeah, such a great point, and you brought it back before I had a chance to. But trust, it's not just about me. I was focused on me trusting, my employer, my government, my leadership. It's about leadership trusting the individuals, and we have to prove or trust each other, and then prove it to each other, and demonstrate that we're worthy of that trust. So it's a two-way street, and I think that the culture of a company, the top-down feeling you get working for an organization or being a part of whatever group, a society, whatever tribe, as my friend Seth Godin talks about, there's trust that's built in those tribes, starting with the family. And it's kind of like when we talk about re-entering society. And I mentioned last weekend getting together with my kids and having a barbecue and hugging them. I have to trust them that I know that I'm, been sheltering in place. And when I do venture out to the grocery store or to do an errand, I am being very careful, to protect myself, not just for myself, but for my wife and for my family and the people who I may come in contact with later. So there's that trust that we have in our families. If, and every situation is different. Every person's experience is different. Every living arrangement's different. If you're living with your parents or your grandparents and you've got kids, it gets very complicated. But in the bigger picture, getting back to work, depending on that situation, as you described, kids at home, what have you, it's going to be different for everybody. So we need to, again, trust each other to make the right choices. Will there be people who, try to take advantage of the system and try to slide through? I don't know. I'm sure, yes, there will be. But it's a bigger question of what are we building here? What are we trying to achieve in the long run? And it is a long run view. Yeah,
sorry,
so a lot to think about.
No, there is, and I was just going to take a step further from what you are. You look at it from an organizational perspective, right? If you eliminate the thought everyone has to come to the office, the opportunities for you to recruit the best people for your organization, right? Not necessarily in that time where you have that office, but then it becomes a global question, right? How do I hire the best person? And it then also then translates into, okay, so what does that mean for a virtual worker? Is the cost for a virtual worker the same in New York as it is in Australia, in the UK, or somewhere else around the world? Does that then create that new benchmark, if you want, because there's this new price or this new cost, be it higher or lower than wherever you currently sit? Does it equal that playing field? And how does that then look like going forward? It's an interesting perspective to sort of ponder a little bit as well.
Yeah, boy, lots of angles we've discovered. We've uncovered covered a lot of interesting fodder for future conversations. But
Yeah.
today, being May 13th, I didn't mention it earlier when you were rattling off Leprechaun Day and the fact that it's Workplace Innovator Interactive live stream day. We're going to continue that conversation with you about trust in a few hours here, folks. But it's also World FM Day, World Facility Management Day, Global FM Day. So we are celebrating facility managers today, and I have a happy hour, virtual happy hour with my friends from IFMA. They do a big push to recognize the FM community, professionals out there, and so many of them have been essential workers during this time. Many not seen as essential. I've heard through some of my network and some of the interviews I've done that unfortunately certain parts of the world, there's certain things that need to be done to prepare the built environment for the return of the occupants, the return of the workforce to the workplace. And some organizations have struggled because certain governmental authorities do not deem the facility management role as essential. I can't imagine, but that's what I've heard from some other parts of the world. But boy, all my friends, whether it's IFMA or other associations and organizations around the world of facility management, I am so proud of you and so proud to know you and be associated with this community. And if there's any, thing that comes from me saying congratulations or well done or let's recognize the FM community, today's the day to do it since it's World FM Day. So just wanted to take a moment to share that with you.
No, that's great, and thank you for doing so. And I know the FM guys that I work with, like, they're brilliant. They're so good. They're so giving. They connect so much of the workplace that really it's the unseen stuff that they connect. They're also probably the most known, best known people in any building because they know everybody and they know everyone's personally. You're so right. They were the last to leave the building. They'll likely be the first into the building to prep everything. So it's great that we get to honor them today. So thank you to all FMs out there. Excellent.
It's people business. And the other thing I'm going to do today, Steve, and I'll give you for the final minutes here, if we can, a little preview. Maybe I should run just some of these by you. I do poll questions during my interactive conversation.
Yes.
So last week at the IFMA Capital Chapter of IFMA Happy Hour, Jeff Snavely was going to be joining me on the live stream today. And Kelly Johnson, our president-elect from the local chapter here, is going to join me. She's a facility director here in the D.C. area. So they were both helping put together kind of a fun, this or that poll questions. Not serious. We're going to have some serious questions and take people's temperature, find out where everybody stands, where their organizations stand.
And temperature?
Well, that could be the case. That could be the case in this world. Very well done. Well played, sir. Well played.
Thank you.
But this or that, you got to choose one or the other. You know what I mean? And my goal is to find things that would be 50-50. So when I put the poll out, you have to choose one of these or the other. It's going to be hopefully a 50-50 split. So here are a couple of the things that they did last week that I probably won't use. I'll just run by you. Would you rather, or this or that, laundry or dishes? Real quick, laundry. This is lightning round. You'll rather do laundry. Okay, it was 50-50 when we did it with the big group. Watch movies or TV shows or movies? You're in your quarantine. Movies over TV shows. Okay, good. These are a couple that I thought of this morning. The Stones or the Beatles?
Stones.
Really?
You mean Stone Roses or is the Stones band?
The Rolling Stones or the Beatles?
The Beatles. The Beatles. I think you meant the Stone Roses.
You like the Stone Roses?
I'm from Manchester. Oh, well, not from Manchester. I lived in Manchester, so yeah.
That was my 60s reference, and I was going to jump to the 80s and say, I don't know, U2 or Madonna. I don't know, pop music from the 80s.
Well, I gotta say U2, man.
Of course, you know who you're talking to. What would be a better alternative to U2 or kind of comparable to U2 that might get that 50-50 split, do you think?
Oasis, and then maybe Eminem, maybe something like that. Sort of, they were around the same time, right? Very different.
Yeah, it's 80s and 90s, yeah. All right, then this one you probably won't have an opinion on, but I'm going to force you to choose. The Jonas Brothers or One Direction?
Oh, I really couldn't tell you either. I couldn't decide.
You have to click a button.
I don't even know where they're. Is there One Direction from the UK?
They are, yeah.
I just go with them because they're from. I think maybe from Ireland or something. Yeah, I don't.
I guess it's going to depend on my audience configuration, the demographics of who's tuning in today. Whether it's a lot of my my friends from the UK are all my US based listeners. But that's the kind of idea. We're going to get the little fun brawl
Nice.
rolling that way, but then talk about trust and how it impacts, so much of what's going on today. So look forward to that.
No, that's great, Mike, and I appreciate you throwing me under the bus a few times there today, so that was good.
Yes.
It's always
The more I
great to
can make
be.
you uncomfortable, the more people will be
Of
drawn to
course.
this show.
You think so? You think so? Well,
So
okay.
that's what
We'll
it's
see.
all
We'll,
about.
we'll see. We'll see. But look, thank you. I appreciate your time today. It was great chatting to you as always, and I appreciate that your last few days as you've sort of pulled me through this mire that I've been fighting through. But I sort of feel like I'm getting towards the other side now, so I appreciate it. And I've just released Christina Herrera's most recent interview, so please do check out her latest, which is really cool, where she explains how organizations are like Rubik's cubes, and let me just leave it at that, and you can go
Ooh,
listening
teaser.
and
I
see
like it.
what
All right.
and see how she described it. So
Very good.
thank you, Mike. Enjoy
And
the rest
thank
of
you,
your day,
Steve.
and good luck later today.
I appreciate it. You too. See ya.